Hello, welcome back. My name is Steve Shefveland. This is episode 2 of the CX Report powered by EGS. So I'm your host, Steve Shefveland. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerging Global Services. We are an outsourcing company, sometimes referred to as a business process outsourcing company. And this is a continuation of a series of podcasts that I've decided to bring to the market. And it's all things customer experience, all things customer support, customer service. This is the world I've lived and breathed for 30 plus years. And it's fun. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to talk about uh, all the different things that impact what a great experience is for customer service, customer support. So, in today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about why location matters, the geography of great CX, great customer experience. There are customer service operations in almost every country on the planet. You know, you go all the way back to the 1960s. I think the telecommunications took off and people started to get phones, and there was this idea then that, gee, we need to provide support to our customers. Why can't they just call us? And so, that's really the genesis of it. And that was mostly in the United States. And then it took off in the UK and other developed countries. But it's continued to grow and grow and grow. And now people can reach out in all different channels over the internet. But where you deliver customer support matters. And traditionally, at least in the United States, which is where I've spent the bulk of my career, customer call centers and customer service centers are very, very good locations and very good jobs for people. But as costs rise and companies are looking for competitive advantage over the years, you saw the what's called the outsourcing or offshoring is another good word of this industry took off in the early 1990s, and India happened to be one of the first locations where these jobs went to, and it was General Electric and a few other big Fortune 100 companies that established and fostered this growth, and then you started to see jobs going overseas from the U.S., traditional call center jobs. Now they've exploded to every nook and cranny on the planet practically. My involvement is in India, the Philippines, Mexico, of course, and Africa, as well as in the United States and Canada, a little bit in Europe, but I can't say I have a lot of experience with call center operations in Europe. So location matters, and that's what we're talking about in this episode. Where your agents sit in the world has a direct impact on customer experience, cost, retention, cultural alignment. So why location is critical? Well, the world's filled with call centers, as we talked about. Philippines, Eastern Europe's become very popular. Latin America, of course. Africa has really taken off for companies, corporations, and consumers who are in Europe and in the UK specifically. Um, customers can tell. Most of the time they can tell, or they can sense that a person is sitting in another country. It's slang, it's kind of expectations of the conversation, the way sense of humor, or the way your call center representative communicates, different phraseologies, different words they use. So location matters. It's very important to think about. When your customer base is primarily in, let's say, the US or Canada, choosing a location that's proximity close to them is important. I think it's very important. Now, I recognize that a lot of companies have gone to Philippines and India, and I'm not here to argue or make a statement that that's a poor decision. But if you have a coffee or a beer with a lot of people on happy hour, you'll hear stories, and everyone knows these stories. And I don't think that's often always great for an organization's brand, some of those stories. And it often involves, I just can't understand the person. They have a thick accent. There's technology now that's making accent neutral. These are great technologies because you don't want to necessarily, not create jobs in some of these locations for people just because of the accent and because of racial tones that people might have towards others, which is real in society. So, but I think it's important that whenever you can keep the customer support operation relatively close in proximity to where you're based and where your customers are based. So our company, Emerging Global Services, we chose Northern Mexico predominantly because we serve the United States, mostly US and Canada. And we're strategically located close to Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, Los Angeles, Orange County, even over towards Texas, and the labor quality is exceptional. So you need to be looking at a lot of facets. We want to talk a little bit more about some of these things to look at. But we chose this location because of its proximity to the United States, the quality of their English, bilingual, of course, highly educated. These people understand the United States culture and consumer. It's easy to travel to, a lot of these things. So these are really important factors. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the key factors when choosing a call center location. Labor quality and education. I just mentioned that, but it's really, really critical. You need to be able to tap into people who have a good, hopefully a minimum of a 2-year college degree, if you can get that, 4-year college degree. Obviously, education matters. And, education in countries like India, Philippines is very good. You can get very well-educated people who want to perform call center related work. There are countries where a lot of call centers have set up where the education is really quite poor. I'm not going to name all those, but I think just a little bit of research, you can figure a lot of that out. If you search this online, you can figure a lot of that out. So, labor and education, number one. Cultural assimilation. It's very important that the location where you set up to have your customer support delivered from, that there is some sort of natural familiarity between the two countries and their culture. Mexico and the Hispanic population in the United States has such now that connections to Mexico and parts of Latin America are so natural, great connection between the two countries. The United States is predominantly Judeo-Christian Catholic. Predominantly, I'm not saying entirely, of course, but Mexico is heavily Christian Catholic. There's kind of a natural, affiliation with faith and religion. And if we think that faith and what people's faith and religion is in different countries doesn't play an impact, that would be a big mistake to make. It plays a major impact on the types of people you hire and how they communicate and how management, works with, trains, interacts with those employees as well. Third thing is you have to have a cost differential. I mean, people outsource their, things like customer support and call centers to another organization because they're looking to save money. They're looking to cut operational costs. Obviously, a place like Mexico, India, Philippines, Latin America, Africa, these places offer that. Now, I'm not arguing or saying that there isn't cost savings when an organization outsources to another U.S. based, or say you're in the UK, a UK based call center operation. There is savings. There's all kinds of savings when it comes to productivity and efficiencies and being able to take on other work instead of having to manage that work. The actual amount you pay might be about the same or slightly less, may not be significantly if a U.S. company outsources to a call center organization, customer service organization in the U.S., there's still savings. And you're driving efficiencies and productivity within your organization by just offloading that task. But you get significantly more with very, very good operations and very good management when you find, locations like Mexico, Latin America, Africa, where the cost of labor is obviously significantly less than, say, the UK or the United States. You want to look for a partner that is paying their employees very well, that they're paying at or above what would be considered fair market for that country. I think that's very important. There should be none of this slave labor. I call it that because that's really what it comes down to. And I have seen organizations in India and in the Philippines paying what I would call slave labor. And when you look at, for example, if the cost for customer support in the United States gets to be below $10 or below $11, you need to look really, really hard at what's going on within that organization and what they're paying these people, the people who might be assigned to your work. Yes, I understand that that still may be considered a good wage in some regions of the world, but it sort of comes down to some common sense, I think. And think about, do we want people who are really, really underpaid being associated with our organization? I think that's something to take a good hard look at. The other thing the fourth thing that's very important here is this retention and availability. You need to make sure that the organization you work with has high employee retention or very low turnover. It should be 25% or less per year. Hopefully 15% per year. There's going to be some turnover that's natural, and then some that's going to be driven by the organization because you're always looking to move, relatively poor performers out. And anybody running call centers knows you're always going to have some poor performers, no matter where you are on the planet. So that's really critical, is low turnover or high retention. So let me go back and just summarize that briefly. Labor quality education, be looking at that. Cultural assimilation, cost and fair wages, and then retention and availability. Those four are really critical and can be dramatically impacted positively or negatively based on the location of the call center itself and where they operate from. I talked a bit about cultural society alignment. I don't need to talk too much more about that here, but it's another thing in my notes as I was thinking about this that's super, super important, is trying to align the customer base that you're serving. Make sure there's a cultural alignment there if possible. I guess the fifth thing I wanted to talk about is there's a lot of talk about nearshore versus offshore versus onshore. So, offshore, and this is coming at it from the standpoint of the United States. But if you're in a country like the UK, Australia, you're going to be looking at, are they other organizations within our country? Are they bordered right next to our country, or pretty close within a short, half a day flight? Or is it truly, overseas in a whole other part of the world? I've been involved in India and the Philippines. For the United States, that's true offshore. I've been involved in Latin America and, of course, Mexico. That is what we call near shore. There's parts of the Caribbean that are considered near shore. And then, in the UK, there's a lot of what would be offshoring, which would be down to Africa, is very popular. So I think it's important that you're aware of the location, where they're at, the time it takes to travel there, and many of the things we've talked about. Obviously, cost of travel plays into your overall cost model in managing your partners in these different regions of the world. The other thing I want to talk about is you need to be looking at disasters. Are there natural disasters that happen in a lot of these regions? Are there heat waves? Are there, heavy thunderstorms? Are there earthquakes and tornadoes? Obviously, typhoons or hurricanes. These are major things that people sometimes don't think enough about. I'm not always a huge fan of the Philippines, only because of the natural disasters that hit that region. I can tell you a few other locations. I mean, even the Caribbean, for example. This is a cultural issue, but they don't necessarily have a lot of, well, they do get hurricanes, so that's a big deal. The other thing that happens over there is I've had a friend of mine who runs a call center in the Dominican Republic. One of the things he's told me a lot is, certain times of the year when the surf is really good, people just don't show up for work. They want to go surfing. Well, you got a job to do. I mean, it's little things like that. And it's those little things like that culturally that can impact your business. So those are little things to be aware of. Just an example. But this came straight from the horse's mouth, a guy that I know that owns about a 600, 700 seat call center in the Dominican Republic. So I guess just in closing, when you're looking at considering outsourcing, pay close attention to your customer base and who you're serving, and who you're supporting, and what is the cultural fit and cultural alignment, and what is the education level you need to have to serve them, and are you talking to possible partners that are in the right locations? Proximity and location is very, very important. And so it does have a lot to do with why we chose Northern Mexico. You have the obvious cost advantage. We have highly educated labor. There's virtually zero natural disasters. There is an earthquake fault line over towards the Pacific Ocean, but it's quite a bit removed from where we're located. We are in the city of Hermosillo, which is the capital of the state of Sonora. We're in Mexicali, and we're in the city called Chihuahua, in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico. So those are where we've chosen to operate. I think the last thing I want to say on my experience with location is look for companies that aren't necessarily in these big, huge populated cities. It's very easy to think that, you go to Mumbai or Delhi, and you're going to have a huge population of highly educated people to draw upon. It actually very often works in the exact opposite. What happens is you have very high turnover eventually. Because where there's a huge population, there'll be a lot of other call centers. So you have a lot of competition if you're running a call center business. And now you're trying to fight to keep people because they want to cross the street and go to a competitor for another 10 rupees per hour. So it creates a lot of employee turnover when you go into very large markets. So to give you an example, my experience with Mexico is I would never set up an operation in Mexico City, Guadalajara, Tijuana. Tijuana is not good. Monterrey. These cities are too large. The population is too high. There's too many other places for call center reps to go to and find work. So take a look at, if you're looking at doing this yourself, or if you're looking at working with a partner, what cities are they in? And are they in what I would call a tier 2 city or even a smaller market? The goal there is for the company to become an employer of choice in that market. And that comes down to cultural issues internally and everything. But you want to make sure that they can be one of the primary employers in that market. Because if not, you're going to have high turnover. And so that's what kills a call center business. It kills a lot of businesses is high turnover. And it's super critical. Now, I'm not saying our organization, we've certainly have gone through periods of time where we've had turnover, and we've had to look at ways to reduce that and make changes. And I think we've done a nice job of that over the years. But I think it predominantly has to do with we're in cities that I call a tier 2 market, meaning the population is between 250,000 up to no more than 1.5 million. You get to a population above 1.5 million, and it starts to become a very large market for a lot of other call centers to set up. And then you have a lot of people that just go from one to another, and it's very hard to retain them. What we have found is some employees have done that, and they come back to Emerging Global Services, and they're like, wow, you guys have a great culture. So anyways, so this is kind of what I wanted to talk about during this episode. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it's beneficial in your in your business, especially if you're currently outsourcing or if you're looking to work with an outsourced customer experience partner. So thank you. Until next time, thanks for listening. Appreciate it.